After decades of suppression and masking the truth,
Hindi ganun si Jordan.
I have finally confronted my dark past,
Finally, you are doing what you are meant to do.
seeking closure and healing through writing my own story.
You're ready to face them.
I am now putting an end to the emptiness that consumed me.
Once you are fully expressed, you want to help and support other people whose identities have been suppressed by family and society.
And leading myself
So you have to die in order for you to be reborn.
Bakit mo naisipan na i-hire ito sa malaking bahagi ng publiko?
to an awakening of authenticity.
Hi, my name is Jordan Patente. I've been retired for almost 2 years now. I usually attend speaking engagements, but most of my time are spent doing my passion project, and that's Transform Media PH. Ang current state ko, I can say na I'm getting better and better. Pero 2 years ago, I can't say that. 33 ako noong nag-set ako ng goal na at the age of 40, I want to retire. So yung 7 years na tinrabaho ko, ang worth talaga nun ay more than 15 or probably 20 years of my life. There's no such thing as day and night. So imagine kung gaano ako kapagod. Kaya talagang suki ako ng mga massage parlors, ng spas, naghanap din ako ng maraming alternative options para ma-relieve yung mga physical stresses ko. In terms of my mind, I really have to quiet it kasi sobrang dami kong iniisip, sobrang gulo ng panahon na yon. And so, I had to meditate a lot of times and look for different ways to really quiet my mind. Before ako mag-40, I was depressed, I was really unhappy, I was even mad.
Every time na magpa-pop up yung name niya sa phone ko through messages or tatawag, parang may kahalong kaba. Parang, ay, ano na naman, parang, ano na naman kaya yung nagawa kong mali.
Noong mga time na lagi niya akong pinapagalitan, lagi siyang galit sa akin, yung pangit lang na experience ko, yung maraming beses niya akong pinagbagsakan ng pintuan. Siguro hindi ko na mabilang kasi lampas 10 beses yon. Tapos may mga time na napapahiya ako sa ibang kasama namin sa trabaho na hindi rin naman sumama yung loob ko kay sir kasi kilala ko siya na parang gusto niya yung perfect yung resulta kaya siya nagkakaganon.
Yung nararamdaman ko sa kanya nung time na yun, parang lagi siyang galit. Parang konting pagkakamali or konting kibot. Parang sobrang big deal. Parang hindi ko na alam kung anong solusyon yung tamang gawin or paano ko siya i-approach. Kasi hindi ko alam kung ano yung tama or mali para kay Sir Jordan. Hindi ko makakalimutan is kapag nagagalit siya, tatawag siya sa akin, ganyan. Tapos, alam ko na galit siya kasi iba na yung boses niya, as in, talagang dire-diretso siya, dire-diretso. Na kulang na lang pumasok siya sa phone ko. Tapos, yung feeling na akala ko, tapos na siya magsalita, no? Yung feeling na akala ko, turn ko na para mag-explain. Bigla niya akong babagsakan ng phone, parang, hi, ganun. Malungkot, mga 15 seconds, matutulala ako, tapos, bubuntong hininga na lang ako.
Siya yung person na hindi yung parang kailangan valedictorian ka, cum laude ka. No, it's more on diskarte. It's more on paraan. Jordan is competitive, super competitive. For example, like sa business, I think hindi rin naman tatagal yung business namin for 7 years if wala siyang ganong attitude. Yung reason na lang, the pandemic, kumbaga yung business or yung company na kapag create na siya ng disinfection, hanggat wala pa yung virus dito sa Pinas, ganun siya ka-competitive, ganun siya ka-advanced ba mag-isip. Usually kasi si Jordan, yun nga, sobrang plan yan, yung daily parang routine niya, nakaplano na lahat yan. Kumbaga alam niya kung ano yung gusto niya. Pero nung na-depress talaga siya, it's like, minsan nga feeling ko buong araw niya is wasted. Kasi hindi mo siya makausap, tatanungin mo rin siya, hindi niya rin alam kung ano sasabihin niya, kung anong plano niya. Totally lost talaga siya. Pagkausap mo siya, hindi siya, actually, minsan mapafeel mo na parang hindi siya nakikinig or wala yung presence niya. Which is totally different yun kay Jordan. Hindi kasi ganun yung character ni Jordan. Twice ko siya ding nahuli na parang naiyak siya. Umiiyak talaga siya, pero lagi lang sinasabi niya, I'm okay, matatapos din to. Para siyang helpless talaga.
Nung time na yon, kung ano-ano lang yung mga pinapanood ko sa phone ko, I've been scrolling up and down, and I saw this video talking about a story of a guy who has been experiencing terrible chest pain. And no one could diagnose kung bakit siya merong chest pain. Ang dami niya ng doctors na pinuntahan. And then on that video as well, I was introduced on the concept of past life regression. Apparently, yung reason bakit laging masakit yung portion na to nung guy na yon was that during his past life, sinaksak siya dito ng arrow sa part kung saan heavy yung pain that he has been experiencing. And after identifying and understanding what he went through in his past life before passing, he actually got healed. At that moment, naisip ko na if there's such thing as past life regression, I should go through it. Ang daming nagpe-perform ng mga past life regressions, but most of them are abroad. And so I remember a dear friend of mine, I asked her, because I know she has connections, and she said, go to this website. That's where I found Irma. In fact, ito yung exact message that I sent Irma during that time. I remember it was November 4 of 2021. Hi Irma, I have some successes in my life, pero I am not happy. I can be outgoing, but on my own space, I feel like a loner. People who are working for me doesn't appreciate me because I am so serious, demanding, and hot-tempered, and I want to change my reality. I want to experience happiness and contentment. And obviously, the rest is history. I went through that session. In fact, yun ay via Zoom lang because at the hype of the pandemic yun. But I was able to get to see her in person, and we were able to talk about my experience with her.
We had our prior call, right? If you remember before the session. And that's really the interview wherein I intuit, I sense if the person sounds like they're ready. Even though you were going through these challenges and you sounded very confused and down, there was the willingness, the openness and the readiness to do something and to try something, that you've never tried before. And I think also in your case, because it was recommended to you by a friend that you know and trust. So parang, okay, hindi naman siya, I didn't find her, out of the blue. So it's somebody that a friend of mine knows about. So I think that helped you also to be trusting of the process, because otherwise your analytical mind would probably write the pros and cons and debate.
Yes. Can you recall, Irma, what was your impression like when we had that session, or at least the first few talks that we had?
You were very intelligent. You were very highly intellectually developed, left brain. In that I could sense na yung dilemma mo is really because you identified so much with your thoughts, with your mind. And the thoughts were, most of them negative. It's like, I'm like this, so kind of like arguing for your limitations. I'm like this kasi ganito kasi and then I should be like this, they shouldn't be like this, So these are all alienating language. Meaning to say, when you say should or should not, it means you're not accepting what's showing up. So, they should do this. What's really happening? They are doing it.
Right.
So it means you're having a war with reality, and you cannot win that war. You cannot, because that's what's happening. But you're not accepting it. You say, no, that shouldn't happen. Hindi pwede. So, nakita mo yung resistance. So that was what's going on inside you. Yung inner conflict na yun. Walang acceptance. It's like, no, that's really not acceptable for me. And so, you can imagine it was difficult for you. You know that sooner or later you're gonna break down. And buti na lang, I think it was at the right time, because otherwise, if you went on like that, you probably would get ill. you know, from all the resistance that you're feeling.
Yung expectation ko dun sa therapy session with Irma was for me to travel back in time, makita ko yung mga dati kong buhay para ma-identify ko kung ano nga ba yung mga issues na dapat kong ayusin. To my surprise, hindi ko na pala kailangang pumunta pa sa mga past lives ko. Kasi yung mga issues ko, during this lifetime.
Not everybody gets to experience it. And that is because sometimes the higher self, deems that it's not necessary. Like, they want to go straight to the question and answer part, or they want you to experience something else. So some people actually, instead of experiencing the past life, they experience the current life. You know, they experience childhood, or prior to childhood in utero, in the womb, and prior to coming in. So, and it can be any of that. And in your case, it was unusual. You may want something, but you may not really get that. It's more of you're going to get what you need instead of what you want. Kasi nga, meron kang issue with the throat. So I just decided na, I determined na it would help you if we balance the chakras first, align them, and release that blockage so there can be a flow. Because you can imagine, if blocked to, then you might find it difficult to let your higher self speak through you, right? So, and which is towards the end part. So, kaya natin ginawa yung unblocking on the very first part, the initial part.
And so, I remember, yung mga nag-flashback talaga sa akin na mga memories are really part of my childhood. Isa na dyan, yung una, I am a self-confessed perfectionist. Sobrang hirap ko talagang ma-please. I can't even please myself based on my result. So, expected na maski yung resulta ng trabaho ng mga staff ko, ng ibang mga tao, I really am not happy. Also, because I'm a perfectionist, ang taas talaga ng standard ko, and it's causing me a lot of troubles. Ang dahilan pala doon was, one time, pag uwi ko ng school, first year high school ako, first grading. Pag uwi ko ng bahay, my mom opened the main door, and the first thing that she did was to slap me really hard. Ang sakit. In fact, until now, yun pa lang din yung experience ko na masampal. And I asked her, bakit? What's wrong? Clueless kasi talaga ako. Kasi daw, yung grades ko, puro palakol sa lahat ng mga subjects, hindi pa nga final yon. It really made a mark in me. Also, isa sa mga memories ko was the fact that nung kabataan ko, elementary days ko, I was molested. And of course, who will be proud of that, diba? I really tried to bury yung experience na yan, pero lumabas siya dun sa session namin. That experience went on for a few years, and I remember it stopped. Nung na-stop yun, kasi parang ang nangyari, na mindset ka na this is the right thing to do. Tapos, syempre you're also enjoying it. You really are clueless. Batang-bata ka, naive ka. And yun na nga yung na-experience mo. When that stopped, I tried to look for someone para gawin yun. Kasi kala ko nga normal siya. And I had a first attempt of that. Yung first attempt ko na yun cost me my most embarrassing moment. Why? Kasi sinumbong ako that very moment sa mother ng mom ko, sa lola ko, in front of my other cousins. And so, with that, yung emotion that I experienced, is so painful, it's so unbearable para sa isang bata. That really made a huge mark in my life. For a very long time, I'm really not opening my sexuality. Maski na alam ko naman yung sexualidad ko, batang-bata pa lang ako dahil sa experience na yan. That experience made me feel I am the worst person in the world. Sobrang nakakahiya. That experience put me in denial for a very long time until very recently. Bata ka pa lang, alam mo na, tapos pinaglaruan ka, pinagtawanan ka rin, kasi sa pamilya namin, I'm the only one. 80s, they made fun of me, and then I had those experiences. I started keeping everything to myself. Doon na nagsimula yung I just focus on what I have to do as a child. Ganun na lang. And then, while growing up, I was told na, kasi may Chinese yung stepfather ko, growing up, I was told by my mom na malas yung pagiging bakla.
Ano ba malas yun? Ganun. Tsaka devil yun.
And so there's really no chance for me to be real, to be authentic to myself. Ilang beses talaga akong napahiya sa bahay namin, sa mga relatives namin. Paglabas ko ng bahay, ganun din sa school. Kasi syempre bata ka, di ba? Hindi mo talaga alam kung ano ba yung tama sa mali. Ang na-experience mo lang, yung you are being humiliated, you're being laughed on. Dahil kakaiba ka sa lahat ng mga tao. Teachers, classmates, high school, college, I became very unauthentic. And so, by default, dahil sa lahat na experiences ko na yan, kapag hindi kita kilala, kapag wala tayong personal connection, what you will see is that strong man. And maski na habang tumatagal, obviously, you get to see mannerisms, makikita mo pa rin yung pagiging malambot ko dahil yun talaga ako, hindi ko yan sasabihin sa'yo. And I am really unhappy about that. All those experiences that I had while growing up, lahat ng iyan, ginawa akong ganito. What's good is that at this point in my life, I've been having a lot of therapy sessions para sa complete healing ko. As I speak right now, wala naman po akong kahit anong galit sa puso ko, sa mga experiences ko, sa mga tao na involved, wala na po. Kaya naman nakakapagsalita na ako tungkol sa nakaraan ko.
The forgiveness exercise was very beneficial for you because you had that trauma inside, you had that anger, you had that the tension and conflict in your relationship with your family.
And I have also accepted who I really am. And it's really about time. So bakit kailangan nating isapubliko itong aking journey to authenticity? Despite all the struggles that I went through, I have an understanding of all those things. Kaya I was able to come into terms in terms of forgiveness and acceptance. Lalo na yung tunay kong pagkatao. Pangalawa, I'm sure itong kwento ko, hindi lang ako ang nagdaan or nagdadaan dito. Marami pa ring matututo sa experiences na pinagdaanan ko. And I am sharing it for people to make my story a survival guide. At ang pinaka-importante, I am sent here by our Creator to experience life. And I've been suppressed, I've been limited, restricted. I allowed all these things to happen into my life. Tama na. Tapos na yung phase ng buhay ko na yun.